behind the scene with David Bedein, giving you that which you will not see in the mainstream media, what is not reflected at all in the mainstream media reportage of what's happening now between Israel and Gaza is the fact that 6 million residents of Israel, 6 million residents of Israel ran for shelters this week. That's the majority of the country. We have 9 million people in Israel. 6 million ran for cover in shelters. I couldn't believe the number of 6 million. I didn't make it up. You can't make these things up, so it's unbelievable. 1,750 rockets fired from nine UNRWA refugee camps run by UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. 82% of the people who live in Gaza are living in these 9 refugee camps, and their whole existence, their education, their ideology, their message that they can communicate to the world is that they have the right to fight for what they call the right of return to places they left in 1948, between 1948 and 1953. And there's actually a refugee camp called Jabalia, which I have a staff based in there. We have a staff based in the refugee camp in northern Gaza, where the people claim to come from Ashkelon, and they've been firing on the city of Ashkelon. 2 nights ago, 350 rockets fired at Ashkelon, causing 3 people to die, in addition to tens of people to be injured. Israel does have the Iron Dome, how shall I say, battery, which shoots down missiles, but it's just not enough. And this is the kind of threat that Israel's under is unprecedented. Now, what's not being emphasized enough is why UNRWA? Why to blame UNRWA? Why UNRWA? UNRWA has welcomed Hamas to take over its facilities. Number one, the teachers union and workers union, which our agency, Center for Near East Policy, the Bedein Center for Near East Policy Research. You can see our research on our website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com, also UNRWA-Monitor.com. We show that the unions of UNRWA, the workers' unions and the teachers' union, are dominated by people who voted Hamas in the elections. Why would the United Nations agency allow that to happen? The school books used by UNRWA are violent, encouraging violence, encouraging attacks on anyone who is a Jew. Number 3, we've filmed, we've documented military training of children from age 9 how to use live weapons. Tomorrow, May 15th, which marks the date when Israel was started, and that the Arabs lost the war of causing 500,000 Arabs to leave Israel, for many of them by force, many of them by choice. No one knows really the real numbers, but at least 500,000 did leave. It's the day that Arabs mark as a day of mourning, and in UNRWA camps, they're going to be having a march from the UNRWA camp in Dheisheh, which is near Bethlehem, to demand what they call the right of return by force of arms. It's very important to understand what is going on here, the context of what's going on. A war for the right of return, which is being fought not only in Gaza, but also in Judea, Samaria, and Jerusalem. 59 UNRWA refugee camps, which are spread throughout the Middle East. 5 million Arabs who were descended from the 500,000 who left in 1948, and being kept there by the United Nations Relief and Works Agency under the premise of the right of return. And they've added the idea of right of return by force of arms. Very important to understand this war. It does have a solution, yes. It has a solution if UNRWA were to act like any other refugee camp and work towards repatriation, reform, rehabilitation, and also to move them into decent conditions, as opposed to keeping them in 2 of the 5 million of the 5 million Arab refugees are living inside these camps. As I mentioned, about 1.2 million living in the UNRWA refugee camps in Gaza, and keeping them in decrepit situation is the best way to incite them for further violence. So that's what is not being mentioned, and they've been planning this for years, and the fact that UNRWA does not have any inspections leads me to the most important message of today. Our agency, the Bedein Center for Near East Policy Research, sent a letter to the head of the United Nations, Mr. Guterres, and to 67 donor nations of UNRWA, asking them to do everything possible to disarm the camps, to take the arms out of the camps. Otherwise, if the light weapons and missiles are not removed, the Israeli army will go in and remove them forcibly. That will cause the deaths of Israeli soldiers, but also of many, many Arab children. That kind of bloodshed has to be avoided. It can be avoided if there's a very clear message that the United Nations Secretary General makes of all the donor nations. Get the weapons, get the missiles out of there. Do not cause more damage to the children and to young Israelis. This has to stop. It can stop if the United Nations makes a clear position known. We have met on 6 occasions. Our staff has met on 6 occasions with the staff of the United Nations Secretary General, who makes it very clear that the responsibility for UNRWA lies with the donor nations. I'll add another caveat. Now there's a suit getting together, a massive suit of people who have been hurt by these missiles and by these weapons coming out of the UNRWA camps, a suit against UNRWA to hold UNRWA responsible. In the next few days, behind the scene with David Bedein will give you an update about how that suit is going. Meanwhile, take a look at our 2 websites, IsraelBehindTheNews.com and also UNRWA-monitor.com. There's no reason why this has to continue. This is David Bedein reporting, Behind the Scene with David Bedein. Thank you for watching.
The new U.S. peace plan for the Middle East demands an end to incitement and violence.
And the president did something unique. He recognized basically the conditions on the ground, recognized reality, that in order for these two groups to live in peace, there's going to have to be some give and take here. And one of those pieces of the give is to understand you cannot continue down the road of indoctrination if there's going to be any peace in the region. That just makes sense. And so that's what the president wants to ensure happens to protect the people of Israel.
72 years after the Arab-Israeli War, 5 million descendants of Arab refugees from 1948 still dwell in the squalor of 59 refugee camps. The camps are run by UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. The residents are indoctrinated with the notion that they have the right to return to villages that existed before 1948. This is a core principle of the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization.
لازم نقاومهم ونرجع أراضينا.
نرجع على أراضينا المحتلة في 48 اللد وعكا ويافا والآخر.
حق العودة إنه نرجع بلادنا زي ما شردونا الاحتلال بقوة من أرضنا، ولازم إحنا نطلعهم زي ما طلعونا بقوة.
لن نتخلى عن حق العودة ولن نرضى بأي وطن بديل وبأي عاصمة غير القدس الشريف. سنعود إلى ديارنا.
لكن نيجي بنقعدهم إنه أنت إيش بلدك إيش بلدك إيش بلدك. الأطفال اللي بتعرفوا على كذا بلد، مش أنا بس القدس، لا أنا وطني فلسطين في كذا مدينة. يعني في بصير انتماء أكثر للطفل. يعني بصير الأطفال هنا يعني إحنا ما بيخلي يعني حتى الآن صار الولد عند الطفل أو البنت إنه صارت كتير متشوقة ترجع لبلدها الأصلي.
أنا بشوف كل ما يمر يوم على النكبة وعلى التهجير كل ما اقترب موعد العودة إن شاء الله. العودة والتعويض ولا بديل ولا بديل ولا بديل.
ثقافة حق العودة أكيد نركز عليها كثيرا، وأكيد هذا هو جزء لا يتجزأ من ثقافة مناهجنا الدراسية. نعطيهم نوصل هاي المعلومات لطلابنا في مدارسنا عن طريق مواد التربية المدنية والتربية الوطنية.
السلام عليكم. بدي أسألكم من وين أنتم أصلكم؟ من أي بلد؟ وبعدين بنحكي عن النكبة شوي. تفضل. من أي بلد؟
من فلسطين.
من حيفا، يافا.
إحنا من حيفا.
من حيفا.
من يافا. من قضا يافا بيت دجن.
بيت دجن.
يافا قضا يافا. راجع بلادي راجع بلادي على أرض الأقصى راجع بلادي أنا ولادي على أرض الأقصى راجع بلادي يا محلى القعدة يا محلى القعدة في حكورتنا يا محلى القعدة ما بنسى وعدة ما بنسى وعدة نرجع أرضنا وما بنسى وعدة.
Because of the antithetical culture of UNRWA, Arab refugees remain in the camps. UNRWA provides health, education, and health services. At the same time, it promotes an ideology that perpetuates war, encouraging residents to remain in their homes until they can conquer Israel and create a new country of Palestine. For decades, the United States was the lead donor to UNRWA, paying for about half its $1.2 billion budget. The U.S. stopped funding UNRWA last year after it determined that American tax dollars had been used to prolong the suffering of yet another generation of refugees. Within UNRWA schools, peace is never discussed. Instead, war is taught daily in prose and in songs.
لا مش حيصير بين احنا واسرائيل لانه شردونا وقتلونا. انه الاحتلال يعرف انه احنا انه هاي الارض النا ومش الهم، انه يعني هاي مش ارض بلا شعب، هاي ارض عليها شعب فلسطين.
فيش سلام بيننا وبين اسرائيل لانه بخربوا حقوق الفلسطينيه انهم يرجعوا لبلادهم. اكيد لا، لانه احنا لا بنعرفهم ولا هم بيعرفونا.
مش راح يكون سلام بينه وبين اسرائيل لانه اسرائيل هي عدوتنا. وانا بحب ارجع على كفر قاسم غصبا عن اليهود وانتصر على اليهود. هم مجموعه من الكفار والناصره ولا بيحبوا الله ولا بيعبدوا الله وبكرهونا.
نحن الثورة والغضب، نحن أمل الأجيال، من هون من عنا انكتب تاريخ الأبطال. نحن الثورة والغضب، نحن أمل الأجيال، من هون من عنا انكتب تاريخ الأبطال.
ولما أم الاختيارة صبح نادت عالجارة وتلاجا الحجارة تنرشك عالدورية تنرشك عالدورية.
مي العصافة حول عالظهرية يا مكة وحيفا نسلم عجقرها لا تنسى الناس بهالضلعة العربية.
فلسطين الناس نبيحها بضلهم عنا فلسطين الحرة، نرجع بلادنا لازم نهجم عليهم.
قول ان شاء الله سنه وراح نحررها، لازم نحررهم عشان نرجع ارضنا.
لازم نقاومهم ونرجع ارضنا اللي اخذوها منا. هي لما طلعونا منها بالقوه، احنا لازم نطلعهم من بلادها بالقوه وغصب عنهم راح يطلعوا. مش راح تضل فلسطين اسرائيل في فلسطين، لانه فلسطين مش للبيع والقدس مش للبيع، راح تضلها لنا. القدس عاصمه فلسطين الابديه.
نحاربهم ونقاومهم يعني بأكتر إشي بنقدر نعمله.
في القرآن الكريم مكتوب إنه زوال إسرائيل راح يتم على يد الفلسطينيين.
At UNRWA schools, education is not limited to texts and is not confined to the classroom. Inside schoolyards, students pass by violent graffiti that glorifies killers. One of the Palestinian heroes is Dalal Mughrabi, whose image adorns alleyways near UNRWA schools and neighborhoods. In 1978, she led a terror gang that commandeered a bus and murdered 38 passengers, including 13 children. On the paths of UNRWA camps, children speak about Mughrabi with awe and reverence.
صور شهداء سووا عمليات، إنه سووا عمليات لأجل الوطن. يعني دلال المغربي سوت عملية تفجير وفجرت حالها عند الجيش.
يعني زي أختي وأمي بنت بلدي.
دلال المغربي هي شهيدة فلسطينية فجرت اليهود وهجرتهم. دلال المغرب أول شهيدة فلسطينية فجرت من الجيش الإسرائيلي، يعني سوت عملية استشهادية.
UNRWA schools portray Mughrabi as a role model. In its current curriculum, Mughrabi's photo appears in a study book for third graders. It is a key lesson in Our Beautiful Language, a new textbook issued in 2019. On page 63, pupils learn to chant the Land of the Nobles. The assignment calls for kids to liberate Palestine and to exterminate the current residents of Israel, the Jews. Here they chant the song in the classroom. Their lethal melodies do not resonate just in the classroom. Here, a teacher leads the same war song during a field trip as children prepare for the liberation of Palestine with toy guns.
وأزيل الغاصب من بلدي وأبيد فلول الغرباء يا بلد الأقصى والحرم يا مهد النخوة والكرم صبرا صبرا فالنصر لنا والفجر يطل من الظلم قسما سأضحي بدمائي لأروي أرض الكرماء لأروي أرض الكرماء
When we visited UNRWA schools, we found students eager to deny the existence of Israel or any Jewish connection to the land.
طب إيش تعلمت عن إسرائيل؟
إنهم كلاب بأخذوا أرضنا. فيش دولة اسمها إسرائيل. محتلة فلسطين. وفيش بعدين إشي اسمه إسرائيل.
هل ممكن الإسرائيليين يضلوا هون في فلسطين؟
لا، بنهجرهم من هون. تعلمنا إنه إحنا لازم ما نخليش أرضنا لحد بنعرفهمش، ولازم ما نسكتش عن حق. فيش شيء اسمه إسرائيل لأنه إحنا اسمها دولة إسرائيل. إحنا بس فلسطين إلنا. مستقبل القدس إن شاء الله راح تكون إلنا. أكيد على أكيد وفيش شيء لا إسرائيل ولا شيء اسمه إسرائيل.
Given America's new insistence that Palestinians eliminate incitement and violence, perhaps more UNRWA donor countries will ask why they allow millions to live as refugees in perpetuity.